to pull my presentation up, and if you guys can let me know if you can see it, then we can just get started.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, we've just had our introductions. I'll go on to the next slide, where you've just got a little bit of information about me. So these two pictures that you have on the side are a picture of my college being the top one, Jesus College, and the bottom one just being a picture of me in something that we call subfusk, which is what the students at Oxford and Cambridge wear during your matriculation ceremony, which is essentially where you're being like formally enrolled into the university, and you also need to wear it during your exams. It's just like a niche little Oxbridge thing that makes you feel a little bit like you're in Harry Potter. So a bit about the collegiate system is that it's something specific to Oxbridge. So in both Oxford and Cambridge, they have the central university, which is what every student belongs to. And then within that, you will be assigned to a specific college, and they will just cater to your more individual needs. So like, for example, my accommodation and things like that are sorted out by my college. So in terms of my interest, specifically outside of medicine, as just like a side thing, I like doing calligraphy and sports, but for the most part, I'm very much centered around science. I also love learning about religions, so not just my own religion, but different religions, and you will see that during this presentation because I do make reference to it quite a bit and why it's important to me in my medical school journey. So in terms of the actual medicine application, I applied to Oxford, of course, Imperial College London, Queen Mary or Barts, and UCL, because I'm from London, so I stayed generally quite local. I did get all of my offers after the interviews, and I left my fifth choice blank. So in medicine and dentistry, for those of you that don't know, on your UCAS application, you can put in 4 choices, all of which can be medicine and dentistry. And then the last one has to be something else, just as kind of like a fail-safe in case you don't get into your first 4 choices. I just chose not to put anything in that last choice because for me, I just sort of knew that if I wasn't to get into medicine, then I would rather take a gap year and just try again. So this talk is going to first start off with just a little overview of the application process itself for those of you that are applying now, so prospective applicants, and then I will go a bit more into actually being a medical student and being at Oxford. Here you have a picture of the application timeline. So wherever you are in school right now is going to essentially determine where you lie on this timeline. So I'm assuming that for most of you, you're on the more beginning part of this, where you're just figuring out your motivation for medicine, getting your work experience and things like that in place, and potentially even starting writing your personal statement and preparing for interviews. And yeah, I'll try and walk through all of these during this talk. So here you have a screenshot of this document that I wrote up when I think I was like in year 12. And it was mostly to help me with my interviews, but it can be an important thing for you guys to think about now, about why you actually want to study medicine, because it is like a grueling 5-6 year long course. So you do need to have your motivations and your passions in place. If you don't know why you're doing it, it's going to show during your interviews, and that might compromise whether you get in or not. So you can see from this picture that I've put up that I didn't actually like script an answer. Like I didn't say this is why I actually want to do medicine and just like have like a really rote learning sort of thing going on, but instead I did a lot of a bullet point sort of system to avoid sounding really robotic, and it meant that I was able to make my answer actually be personal to me and more natural. And of course, I hope like you guys are like reading through this and like picking up points, and like you're free to like make notes on it or whatever. But do not copy because again, that will definitely show during your interviews if you have just taken someone else's motivation and used it yourself. Also because we're all different and we would have had different experiences. So for me, my journey into medicine was quite personal in that I had a lot of experience with the medical field in general growing up, and you may not have necessarily had that, and that's fine. And it's more just about like pinpointing what it was for you. And it's completely okay if it wasn't just like one situation, because you might come across loads of people that say like, oh yeah, I broke my leg when I was like 6 and that's why I want to do medicine. And you don't need to have an experience like that. Like I did say in my 4th bullet point that it's experiences over a few years. So it was a cumulative sort of thing for me that ended up making me have an informed decision to decide that I want to do medicine. So yeah, on the side of the screen, you can see a picture of me when I think it was like in year 8 or something. And I'm taking blood from a prosthetic arm. It's not real blood. It was Ribena or something like that. And it was part of an outreach program that I was a part of. So I started doing like loads of outreach things when I was like in year 7, and I continued that all the way through to year 13. And I think those did play like a really big part in my application. And if you guys are from a winding participation background, then I would definitely recommend taking part in those, because the opportunities are there for a reason. Another thing that I did a lot of was research, and those kind of couple in with outreach programs. So I did like a research project on polycystic ovary syndrome. I did one on arteriovenous malformations. I did one on like the bioethics of gene editing, I think. I even got published for one of them. And just having those kinds of things in your belt just puts you in good stead ahead of other applicants, because generally speaking, the next couple of bullet points that I've mentioned, other people do have them. So like your work experience, loads of people will have work experience, same with volunteering. But your research and your supercurriculars, which I realize I've spelt wrong there, they are the things that will make you stand out more, because they're more niche and they're more specific. So your supercurriculars, which I will touch on here, are things that are they go beyond your specification, so they're not going to be related to your schoolwork, but at the same time they're not extracurriculars because they're not hobby focused. So like your extracurriculars, say, would be something like baking or sports or something like that, whilst your supercurriculars are still going to be centered around medicine, but it's just going to be something that your school wouldn't necessarily offer. So say, for example, if you did a bunch of outreach programs, or if you went to conferences, you went to talks, you signed up to loads of events, you were into like some kind of journal like the BMJ or something like that, those would all fall under your supercurriculars. So I've listed a bunch of the ones that I did on the screen. I don't want you guys to get scared and think like, oh my gosh, she did so much, because you don't need to do this much. And I don't actually know anyone from the top of my head personally who's done as much as I have. Like I just genuinely enjoyed doing them, and you don't need to have this many. But having a couple can definitely help you. So I've highlighted a few of them here. So I'll speak about NYASJA, which is with the New York Academy of Sciences. And the reason why I highlighted that is because it was an international program. So unlike the other things that are listed here, it wasn't specific to a university. And what it meant was that I knew that I was going to be one of the only people in my entire UCAS cohort that did that. And that was true, because when I did the New York Academy of Sciences program, we basically had some stats that came out, and it told us where the students were from, like what country they were located in. And it was 1,000 students from around the world, and only 2 of us were from the UK. And I was one of those people from the UK. So I knew that basically no one is going to get to say that they did this as well. So if you are in like year 10, year 11, you can definitely do something like that. If you're not, you can still definitely do other things, and like it's not out of the world, don't worry. And yeah, I've already touched on being published, so I won't speak too much about that, but it can definitely make you sound like like, you know what you're talking about. If you've been published about a specific kind of thing that you're interested in, you guys can search up a Future Frontline on Google. I'm pretty sure they do still publish people, and it's relatively easy to get published. You just write up an article about something you're interested in, and if it's like half decent, you can get published. And then also I've highlighted OMAC, and I've not just highlighted it because it's at Oxford, but also because it's specific to Muslim students. So OMAC stands for the Oxford Muslim Access Conference, and I'm sure that there are other initiatives that are focused on different groups, so like people of different faiths and religions and things like that. But it's just nice having something like that. So if you are a Muslim student, then you can attend OMAC, hopefully. It runs for year 11s and year 12s, and it's essentially just to encourage minority groups who aren't represented as much in Oxford to apply, because you can absolutely get in if you are given the tools to get in, which hopefully we are giving you. So yeah, a little bit about my work experience. I did quite a few, but I'm only mentioning 2 here. So one of the ones, picture on the left, is a picture of the Royal Marsden Hospital. The one on the right is the Department of Health and Social Care down in London. And I worked in both of those. And I just want to like stress the importance that your work experience doesn't need to be clinical. So it doesn't have to be in a hospital, and it doesn't have to like be in a care home or a pharmacy or something. It literally can be like in a school, or just like it's just something that seems like it's not exactly related to medicine, because essentially what admissions officers are trying to gauge from your work experience is whether you've picked up the relevant skills and whether you can apply them to a medical career. So for example, in both of my work experiences, say I would have picked up like teamwork, leadership, communication, active listening, empathy, that kind of stuff. You can literally pick up all of those in a school setting if you're like working with some small kids and they have an argument or something and you're meant to be resolving their problems. You can literally pick up all of those skills during that as well. And as long as you can apply it correctly, then that's literally all that matters. If you are struggling to get your work experience, then I would direct you towards online work experiences as well. So with the Northern Care Alliance, I did do an online work experience, and there's loads more that are available online. Please don't pay for them. There will be like loads of things that you find online that are like just ludicrous amounts of money. You don't need to pay for any of those. I don't think I paid for a single work experience, because you just don't need to. Okay, now moving on to personal statements. So for those of you that don't know what a personal statement is, it's part of your UCAS application, and it's 4,000 characters. That does include your spaces. So that is like roughly an A4 page. And the way I like to think about a personal statement is like you saying why you want to do medicine, and then it's also you saying why they should pick you. So you kind of split it between why medicine and why me. That's how I thought of that, at least, and that's how I structured my personal statement. So at the bottom, you can see that I wrote my 2 cents about the personal statement, which is that you will get loads of advice about your personal statement, and that might be from teachers or parents or family or friends or anyone. But I want to like stress the importance that it is a personal statement. So you don't need to accept the advice of everyone, and sometimes the advice will clash. So be firm in whatever you feel like works best for you. If you think something sounds better and it's something that you would say, like you can imagine yourself saying it in your voice, just stick with that, and it will probably be what ends up being the best for your application. And then also how I did my personal statement was essentially I had this like really, really big document. I think it was like 18 pages long or something. And I wrote like a bunch of things that I did. So I showed you guys already like the slide on supercurriculars and just like activities that I did that can potentially like help me in my medicine application. I detailed it a little bit, maybe like wrote about the skills that were involved in that. And then in my personal statement, I just brought those experiences and condensed them down. So I formed 3 like completely different personal statements that had different experiences in them. And then I sent them to people and I asked them to help me pick the best paragraphs. And then I just merged the best paragraphs in one normal personal statement. And then I had like my golden personal statement, I guess. And I did it in a relatively short amount of time, like maybe like a month or 2, which I think is pretty good because I know that loads of people spend like a good like 6-7 months writing it. So hopefully that helps. If you do have the time, try and make a document like that. I'm sure it will be helpful. Okay, moving on to your admissions tests. So I hated the admissions tests. I think most people think that they're the worst part of the application, and I agree. If you are in, I think, year 10 and below, then you don't need to do the BMAT because they are scrapping it. So that's amazing. You don't need to worry about it. But for everyone else, you might need to sit your BMAT. It will depend on the universities that you apply to. And likely most people do sit the UCAT as well. So the UCAT is your University Clinical Aptitude Test, and it's split into 5 sections, which you can see are listed on the screen. The first 4 sections are marked from 300 to 900, 900 being the highest, and basically no one gets 900, so it's fine. Don't worry about getting 900. And then your last section, you get a band 1 being the highest. And I think a common misconception about the UCAT specifically is that you can't revise for it or you can't prepare for it. And that's not true. I think loads of people say that because it's not theory based in the sense that it doesn't come with a specification or a syllabus to it. But you can definitely practice the questions. If you go in blindsided for the UCAT, you will largely not know what you're doing. And I think just what it is about practicing here is managing the time constraints, because specifically with verbal reasoning, which is your first section, it's very, very time pressured. And you do need to be able to develop like your comprehension and reading skills to do well in your UCAT. Your BMAT is a biomedical admissions test, and like I said, it's selective, so you will not have to do it. It will depend on whether you apply to those universities. So for example, Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, Imperial, Leeds, I think, Kiel, maybe, Brighton and Sussex, they make you do the BMAT. And your BMAT is split into 3 sections. So your section 1 is like critical thinking, analysis, reasoning sort of vibes. Your section 2 is the theory-ish section. So that's where you do actually get a syllabus, and it's meant to be GCSE in maths and science, but it's kind of not. It sort of like steps into like AS level territory, but it's not too bad because like I said, you do get the syllabus, so you can just learn things off of that. And then your section 3 is your essay writing, which is quite a nice way to end it, I think. And yeah, you can absolutely prepare for the BMAT as well. Again, please don't pay for the courses. Like I've seen so many courses online for the UCAT and the BMAT. You don't need to pay for them. I didn't pay for this stuff and I'm still at Oxford. And also don't worry if you don't do too well on them, because it's only one part of the application, and generally speaking, the application process will be holistic. Like they will factor in your GCSEs in some unis, your A-levels or your predicted grades, the admissions test scores, your personal statement, your teacher reference, like it's just loads of things that come into play. And also if you are from a widening participation background, then they do contextualize it a bit. So for example, for me, I think they like upped my BMAT score because of my home postcode. And yeah, it's just like a way to widen access. Okay, so now moving on to interviews. So you have 3 types of interviews. You have MMI, panel, and group interviews. Sorry, I don't know why that just pops up. Yeah, you have 3 types of interviews, and your group interview is like very uncommon. I think like Nottingham does it or something. I don't actually know from the top of my head all the universities that do group interviews, but I didn't have a single one. And then your MMI is going to be your most common. So MMIs are your multiple mini interviews. And then panels are a bit niche. They're like specific to Oxbridge. I had a panel interview in my Bart's Queen Mary interview as well. And panel and MMI interviews are kind of the same in that you get the same sorts of questions. It's just that in a panel interview, it's a little bit more intense because you might have like 3 interviewers or 4 interviewers. I think one of my friends has like 7 interviewers, and then it's you. So it can be a bit scary, but it is like the same sort of questions that you're being asked. So here on the screen, I've just put up a picture of one of my interview score sheets for a mock interview that I did in year 13. Yeah, you can see at the top it says 1811. So that was the 18th of November when I was in year 13. And you can see that I did like really mediocre. Like I didn't do fantastic in the interview. And I remember seeing it and just being really, really disheartened, and was like, oh, well, I definitely can't get into Oxford, because this was an Oxford mock interview as well. And I was thinking like, I can't just be mediocre for Oxford. I have to be like up there, because in medicine in general, like generally speaking, the applicants are going to be very able, and I'm sure all of you guys are very bright. So you do need to like kind of push yourself in that sense. But I've put this up here because I want to let you guys know that just because you do bad in one bit, it doesn't mean that it's going to end up like that. So I could have just seen this and then given up and been like, oh no, I can't do it. Like, this is too hard, because I really tried hard for this mock interview as well. Like, I fully wore a suit and everything. Like, I came like all prepped for this, and then I just didn't do how I wanted to do. But instead of giving up, I actually tried to work on this. I tried to use feedback that I got, and I tried to fix up the things that I didn't know too much about. And here is a picture of one of my real interview score sheets. So this was, I think it was my Bart's interview or something, and you can see I literally got full marks. I don't know anyone who got full marks on their interview, but it's possible. And yeah, basically don't give up. Just because you find one part of the application process hard, don't just like leave it be and think that you can't do it anymore, because that's not the case, and you absolutely can. Yeah, okay, so now moving on to A-levels and grades. So I'm assuming that a couple of you guys are like in year 12, year 13. So you're going through your A-levels right now. I'll let you guys have a think about what you think that slide is, the second picture. And I'll be really impressed if anyone can get it right. It's a histology slide of something, a cell. But yeah, so about A-levels, I feel like I kind of put them on the back seat during my application, because I was really, really invested into medicine, and I was like, yeah, I can just get the grades. Like, I'll just, you know, that annoying kid that would never revise and they would ace all of the exams? I was that kid. Like at GCSE, like I wouldn't revise anything and I would just do like fantastic. So I let it get to my head at A-levels, and I just didn't do work. And then I got an E at the end of year 12, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get an E. Like, they're gonna predict me so low, I'm not gonna get into medicine. And I had to like really pick up my game. So it is really important to like have a balance between the medicine application and your A-levels, because even if you ace your application, if you don't get the grades, you're not going to get into any medical school, because that is like the most important prerequisite for your medical school. The third picture is just a picture of me and one of my friends in our volunteering uniform. So we volunteered at King's College Hospital. If you are based in London, then I'm pretty sure they're still taking volunteers. Like, if you just search it up, like King's College London Hospital volunteering or something, this application should come up, and I think they also do it at UCL, although UCL might be age restricted. And then the last picture, like I mentioned at the start of the presentation, my religion is really, really important to me. This is a picture of our school prayer room, and I was in the prayer room all the time because I would be so stressed and just like really, really overwhelmed from A-levels, and just like I wasn't too fussed about the application process itself. Like, I felt like I had that down. But it was specifically chemistry A-level that was like really getting to my head and just making me really, really worried. And for me, my prayer room was just like that place that I could go to. It just helped me calm down and relax. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because the application process in general can be really hard, especially if you have friends who aren't applying for medicine, dentistry, or veterinary medicine. So in my school, I was actually the only person in my entire year that got in. And my other friends weren't applying for it. So you can sometimes feel like you're doing a lot more work than they are. Like it might seem like they're just chilling, they're just living their lives, and you're always doing something. So it is important to have like a coping mechanism or something that you use to just help you like detox and relax. And yeah, please acknowledge your mental health, because I'm going to be honest, like the work doesn't get easier. Once you come to university, it does ramp up expectedly. So you do need to have something in place to help you manage that kind of stuff. And then also I've just put up this picture of me sleeping in our, it's like our study room, I guess, in school. And I just put it up here to like, again, let you guys know that I'm not someone that like works all the time, because I think when you hear Oxford or Cambridge, or you just hear medical student in general, you think about someone who is like working day and night. They're like attached to the library and they're just always like head down in books. And I just want to let you guys know that that's not the case, and I am human and I do procrastinate, and loads of people procrastinate, and it's okay to not always be doing work. So yeah, after your application, hopefully now it's results day and you've got a screen like the one that you can see on the right, which is a screenshot of what I saw on our results day. And yeah, hopefully it will mean that you are going to medical school. Congratulations if that does happen. If it doesn't, it's completely fine. One of the most common interview questions that you can get is, if you don't get into medical school this time, what would you do? And like the worst thing you could say is, I would give up, because that's not what they want. A medical school degree in general is so emotionally taxing. For you to say that you're just going to give up after one pitfall is just going to like be evidence that you wouldn't be able to manage the degree itself. So if it does just so happen to be the case that you don't get into any of your universities on results day, it's not the be all end all. You can absolutely switch it around. You can take a gap year, you can apply again, you can strengthen your application. And a gap year is so fun. Like you can do so many things during your gap year. You could like learn to drive or get a job, or just like, I don't know, like one of my friends actually went to like Canada and went skiing for like her whole gap year, and it was great. So yeah, it's not the end of the world if you don't get in the first time around. Okay, so now that's the whole application process done, and now we are in actual medical school and what medical school is like. So here I've just got up some like pictures of things that I've like been doing during my time at Oxford. A lot of them are like centered around our freshers. So freshers is when you are first introduced to the university, and like different societies are basically just trying to welcome you, make you feel like, oh, it's not as daunting as you would have expected it to be. So the picture on the left is from our Islamic Society. They are amazing. They have so many events up, and it's likewise for different societies. So I know one of in the bottom picture towards the left, one of the girls there, she is like part of Christian society, and she's like always going to their events. So like there's loads of things for loads of people. So like don't worry about feeling like you're going to be really alone, or like you're just not going to fit in, because it won't be the case. There's loads and loads of societies to help combat that. And yeah, it's just been a really nice experience overall. Of course, it does come with the workload and stress and things like that, and I'll touch on that in a bit. But I've just put this up here to let you guys know that it's not all work. So you're not just going to be like doing work all the time, if that makes sense. You will have like the time to like go out with your friends and do other things, etc., etc. So yeah, like I've already slightly mentioned about the more serious things, so like stress, workload, imposter syndrome, diversity, and specifically to me, disability, because I do have a disability. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about these things because they're more common than you would think. And even if you feel like they're not an issue for you right now, it might be something that presents to you in medical school. And I think that it's pivotal for you to know how to navigate this kind of stuff. So like your workload and stress kind of couple together in the sense that more workload equals more stress, right? Makes sense. And I think every medical degree will have an aspect of that, but arguably more so at somewhere like Oxford or at Cambridge, where it's just very, very fast paced because we have shorter terms than other universities. So in other unis, you have like, I think it's like 10 or 12-week terms. We have 8 weeks. So everything is kind of just like crammed in. And your timetable just looks like every single day. Yeah, literally every single day I have something scheduled in. I would show you guys my timetable, but it's stuck on my wall, so you'll just have to imagine it. And then a little bit about imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome has been such a big thing for me, and I don't know if anyone feels it right now, as in like whatever stage you are at right now, but it's completely okay to feel it and it's completely normal to feel it. So imposter syndrome is essentially feeling like you don't belong wherever you are, or like you shouldn't be there. So in my head, I would just think, oh, I'm different in like all of these aspects, and I'm not like the typical Oxford student in all of these aspects, therefore I shouldn't be here. And that's why it links to the diversity little cloud bubble that I've got as well, because I'm Bengali, so I'm from a South Asian background. I come from a low socioeconomic background. My postcode back home is like, I think we're like the poorest borough in London. Like I mentioned, I have a disability. I'm Muslim, like loads of things just kind of factor in, and it would make me feel like, oh gosh, like I'm not like the typical rich upper class person who's privately educated at Oxford, and you come across loads of those people. But the thing is, it's nowhere near as daunting as you expect it to be. So even if there are loads of rich, upper class, privately educated people, it doesn't mean they're bad. Like, they're not the villains or anything. Loads of my friends are those people, and they're so lovely. So I think it's just sort of boils down to like confronting those kind of thoughts that you have and catching yourself out when you come across them, because you've absolutely done the work to get wherever you are, like whether it's at medical school or it's your A levels or your GCSEs, or whether anyone here is like taking a gap year and you've already done all of that. Like, you have done all of that work to get to wherever you are now, so be okay with that and accept it. And even if some people aren't nice about it, because I have had people like say things to me because of those like things that I've mentioned, you just ignore them, because honestly, if you do get comments like that where people are just like not nice to you because you have these like extra things going on that they don't have, it just goes to show that they are arguably narrow-minded, and why would you want to waste your time on like a mindset like that when you can just focus on yourself and do your own stuff and like just have a good circle of friends essentially. And as you guys can see, I have put up things like related to my religion on this slide, because again, my religion has been like such a grounding factor for me in managing that kind of stuff. And again, it's completely fine if you guys have something else that works for you. Just please have something. Don't just have like all of these things going around in your head where you're like really stressed because you have so much work and you feel like you don't fit in, because it will catch up to you. Try and tackle it head on. And I promise you will be able to manage it. You can get through it. So yeah, we are coming towards the end of the presentation and getting to the Q&A. So I've just put up here for your next steps, if you're interested, to just try and explore some of these things. These are some of the stuff that I used during my application. And again, I've highlighted some things. So the things that I've mentioned already when I listed all like my super curriculars, that might be helpful if you are like year 10, year 11, because you can do them. I've also highlighted MedicMind because they have a free I think it was called the Year 12 Foundation Mind program, which I was part of, where you get put in a group and you're like assigned to a medical student, and they just like help you with your application, which is great because it's free and it's widening participation. And yeah, it's just really good. Like I still have my mentor's number and I could contact them if I wanted. And then I've also highlighted to subscribe to university newsletters because I think loads of people don't know about it. And it's so helpful. And they basically just advertise loads of events that you can take part in, and those would all fall under your super curriculars. Like I know that UCL, during my application cycle at least, they had like a whole series on like genetics or something. And if you were really into genetics, you could just look into that and hopefully it would be really helpful for you. Okay, now I've just got some top tips for you guys. I won't read through all of them, but you guys can just skim through it and I'll just touch on the last two. The first one being to please believe in yourself because like I said, you've worked so hard to get here. You can absolutely do it. And if you need help, there's loads of people there to help you along the way. And also don't compare yourself to two people. So the first person I don't want you to compare yourself to is someone else, because like I've already mentioned, everyone's not the same and loads of people would have been more privileged than you in that they've had access to different things. So it doesn't make sense for you to compare yourself to them. You're just not to begin with on the same sort of playing field. And then also I don't want you to compare yourself to yourself when you were having a better day, because your progress in general is not linear. Like your happiness isn't going to go like this, it's going to go more like this, right? So if one day you are like on a high and you're doing fantastic and then another day you're like down here, it doesn't make sense for yourself to compare those 2 days, because of course when you're mentally doing better you're going to be performing better. But yeah, I hope that was all helpful. That is the end of my talk. Medicine is accessible, and if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And also at the bottom, you have the email of the Northern Care Alliance. So if I don't get around to any questions, you can email them the questions and hopefully we can